Hey there besties! Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're continuing our recap of the manhwa, Leave Happily with My Ex's Uncle. If you're new to this series, check the description below for links to previous episodes. Lastly, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy the video. It really helps our channel grow. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. I didn't. Evelyn stammered, her face tense. What? Evelyn? Did you hit someone with your car? Her father exclaimed, his voice sharp with disbelief. Evelyn froze, fear clouding her expression. Her breathing grew uneven as she suddenly clutched her chest. Ah! It hurts. Dad, my heart hurts. Alarmed, her father moved quickly toward her. Evelyn, what's wrong? Their mother rushed over, pale with worry. Is it another heart attack? Evelyn winced, trembling as she pressed her hand harder against her chest. It hurts badly, she gasped. Help her sit down, her mother urged, guiding Evelyn to the couch. The medicine is in her room. I'll get it, her father said, dashing upstairs. Vivie stood quietly, watching the chaotic scene unfold. Her mind drifted to memories from her previous life, specifically one bitter moment when she was pregnant with Charles' child. Charles, you promised to come with me for my prenatal exam today, she had said, hoping for his support. But Charles had only spared her a glance as he focused on Evelyn lying in bed. Take a cab yourself. Eve's having a heart attack. If I leave, who's going to take care of her? Vivie's lips tightened at the recollection. Was Evelyn acting even back then? The maid's voice pulled her back to the present. Mr. Lawson is here. Charles? Why is he here? Vivie thought with suspicion as he entered the mansion, carrying gifts. I heard you were in the hospital. Are you feeling better? He asked, his expression neutral. The maid beamed. He brought a lot of tonics for you. Feigning a smile, Vivie responded, Really? Chuck, you're so thoughtful. Inside, bitterness churned. He's only here to push me into taking the blame for Evelyn, she thought grimly. Come on, join us. We were just discussing something important, she said, leading him toward the living room. Charles, hi, their mother greeted weakly, still holding Evelyn. Charles' eyes widened. Eve? What's wrong? My heart hurts, Evelyn murmured, reaching for his hand. Concern flickered in his gaze. It's all my fault, Vivie said, her voice trembling with feigned guilt. I was just trying to solve the problem but upset her instead. What did you do to Evelyn this time? Charles demanded. I told our parents about her hitting someone with her car and running away, Vivie confessed. Both Charles and Evelyn glared at her, their expressions taut with fury. She could go to jail for this. Charles, do you have any ideas? How can someone as fragile as Eve survive prison? Vivie said, faking tears. Inside, she smiled coldly. Sylvia. Charles thought bitterly, his jaw clenching. Mrs. Murray, excuse us. I need to speak with Vivie outside. Their mother hesitated but nodded. Outside in the villa's garden, Charles released Vivie's hand with a scowl. You want me to go to jail for Evelyn, don't you? She snapped. Why don't you say it to my parents' faces? Sylvia, stop being stupid, Charles retorted. Even if you get sentenced, I'll spend enough money to make sure it's only a few months. Her breath hitched in disbelief. Evelyn's health is poor. As her sister, shouldn't you help her more? He ruffled his hair, visibly irritable. A few months in jail isn't that much of a sacrifice, is it? His words sent a shiver down Vivie's spine. A few months in jail isn't much. Vivie repeated, her gaze darkening. Memories from her previous life flashed in her mind. Being bullied, humiliated, and nearly beaten to death in prison. Her mother had died young, donating a kidney to save her, and the grief had been too much for her father to bear. And in your opinion, that's nothing, she thought bitterly, her annoyance growing. If you think it's so easy, why don't you go to jail for her? She demanded, stepping closer to Charles. Why are you trying to ruin my life? Sylvia, stop being ridiculous, Charles snapped. A few days in prison won't ruin your life. I'll arrange everything. You won't have a hard time. I'll use my money to make sure of that. His tone softened as he placed his hands on her shoulders. Eve did me a huge favor once. As long as you help her this time, I won't owe her anything. His lips curved into a smile. When you get out, we'll get married and live a nice life together. He gently held her face, his smile disarming. Vivie froze, staring down for a moment before letting out a mocking laugh. Get married, she repeated teasingly. Then she shoved him hard, causing him to stumble backward until he hit a tree. Sylvia, are you crazy? He demanded, straightening himself. Charles, I will never marry you in my life, she declared firmly, her gaze fierce. His eyes narrowed. What did you say? You heard me, she said, voice steady. I will never marry you because I hate you. That's impossible, he exclaimed, stepping closer and grabbing her hand. Don't go too far, Sylvia. Are you hooking up with another man again? What are you talking about? Let go of me, she demanded, tugging her hand back. Sylvia, he hissed, do you really think I don't know? You've been chasing other guys since high school. I asked Eve to keep an eye on you, but you've always treated her cruelly. His words stung, but Vivie's expression remained defiant. Charles recalled their last encounter at his house, her voice cutting through his disbelief. Not everyone deserves kindness. You know the story of the farmer and the snake, don't you? She had said, hands on her waist, eyes sharp. Now, even breaking off their engagement? Charles clenched his teeth, furious. You, he started to say, but Vivie's mother waved at them, interrupting the heated exchange. Chuck. Vivie's mother called, drawing his attention. Vivie shook off his hand, freeing herself. Your phone's pinging, it's your Uncle Tristan, her mother said, stepping closer with his phone in hand. Uncle Tristan? What for? Charles asked, looking tense as he took the phone from her. Vivie, Chuck, did you have a fight? Her mother asked, noticing the uneasy atmosphere between them. No, we didn't, Charles stammered, his tone stiff. We were just having fun. Right, Chuck. Vivie teased with a playful smile. Charles remained silent, his expression tight. Don't worry, Mrs. Murray. We're fine, he assured her, forcing a smile. Let me call my uncle back. He turned away, dialing. Hello, Uncle Tristan. Are you free for dinner tomorrow night? Tristan's voice came through the line, calm but authoritative. I am, Charles replied. I missed dinner with you yesterday. I had other matters to handle, Tristan explained, pausing briefly. Bring your fiancé with you. The line went dead. Charles stood still, processing the unexpected request. Uncle Tristan rarely showed interest in their personal lives, especially matters of marriage. Why is he asking for Vivie this time? Charles wondered. Mrs. Murray, Uncle Tristan wants to invite Vivie and me to dinner tomorrow night, he informed her. Well, that's wonderful, Mrs. Murray said, looking pleased. Vivie, on the other hand, was surprised. The narcissist wants to have dinner with me and Charles? Is he trying to assert his authority while I'm still engaged? She wondered uneasily. I need to decline this conspiratorial dinner. Just as she was about to refuse, her mother spoke up cheerfully. Vivie, I hope you take this opportunity to get to know Tristan. After all, you and he will be family. Well, I'll pick Vivie up tomorrow before dinner, Charles said. By the way, is Eve feeling better? Much better with the medicine. Don't worry, Mrs. Murray replied, waving it off. Good. I'll head back now. Vivie, remember to wear something nice tomorrow, Charles said with a polite smile before leaving. See you tomorrow, Chuck, Mrs. Murray said, waving him off. Turning to Vivie, she smiled warmly. Come on, let's pick out a dress for you. Tomorrow, I'll make sure you look so beautiful that Charles and his uncle will be amazed. Okay, Vivie replied, a little tense as she followed her mother inside. The next day, Vivie's father brought Evelyn another dose of medicine. Eve, do you feel better after taking the medicine? He asked, patting her head gently. I'm better now. Thanks, Dad, she replied with a smile. I'm just glad you're okay. Looks like you won't need to go to the hospital, he said, collecting the glass from her hand. Evelyn fell quiet, her expression clouding. Even when I had a heart condition, I had to manage with medicine at home. No hospital visit, no proper treatment. But when Sylvia was drugged, they admitted her straight to a VIP ward, she muttered under her breath. What did you just say, Eve? Her father asked, his brow furrowed. Nothing, she said quickly, her body tensing. Dad, I'm so thirsty. Can you get me another glass of water? No problem. Just lie back and get some rest, he said, standing up. Okay, she replied, smiling faintly. They act like they care so much, but they won't spend money on me. Saving it all for Sylvia, aren't they? They won't give me the inheritance anyway. If I can't have it, she shouldn't have it either, she thought grimly, watching him leave. Once alone, Evelyn pulled out her phone and started chatting with someone. Have you erased the security footage? She typed. I will once I receive the payment, came the reply. I've already transferred the money. By the way, contact the victim's family. Don't they want to settle this privately? I'll pay them a lot, but they need to make a big deal out of it, she messaged, her lips curling into a smile. Switching chats, she saw a client confirming a payment for the red heels she had sold. These red heels are discontinued, totally worth it for this price. Let me know first if you get more rare luxury items. I'll offer you a good price, the buyer had written. Sure. I have limited edition dresses and necklaces coming up, Evelyn replied smoothly. Sylvia gets so many gifts from Charles, but she never even wears them. They just gather dust in the closet. She won't notice if I take a few. I'll call it compensation for the stress she's caused me, she thought with a grin. A familiar voice pulled her from her thoughts. Mom, isn't that too much? Vivie asked as she descended the stairs. Of course not. If you don't believe me, ask Eve, her mother said confidently. Evelyn glanced up, her eyes widening at the sight of Vivie, who looked elegant and refined, dressed for an evening event. As Vivie passed by, she shot Evelyn a pointed stare, making her flinch and hurriedly hide her phone. Wow, Vivie. You look amazing in Mom's couture dress. So mature, just like Mom. Evelyn said with a forced smile, tension creeping into her voice. I guess I do seem a bit more mature than those who like to act cute, Vivie replied coolly. I was just complimenting you, Evelyn said, her tone turning subdued. You misunderstand, Eve. This dress was specially tailored for your sister. When she marries Chuck, she'll need to attend formal dinners and dress accordingly, their mother said cheerfully. Mom, this dress is beautiful. I want one just like it, Evelyn said, her voice pleading. This style doesn't suit you. I'll take you shopping for something better next time, her mother assured, patting her hair gently. Well then, we have an appointment. Evelyn said with a bright smile. She pretends to care about me, but she doesn't want to spend a dime on me, she thought, keeping the smile fixed on her face. By the way, Vivie, you're all dressed up today. Where are you going? She asked casually. Before Vivie could respond, their maid appeared, brimming with excitement. Miss, Mr. Lawson is here to take you to his family dinner party. The Lawson family dinner. Evelyn's smile faltered briefly. Didn't Sylvia say she wanted to break off her engagement with Charles? Have they made up? No way, I can't let that happen. She fumed inwardly, though her expression remained pleasant. Hey, Vivie, take me with you. I haven't seen Chuck's mom in ages, Evelyn said, grasping Vivie's hand with a friendly smile. Tonight's dinner is hosted by Charles' uncle. It's not polite to show up uninvited, Vivie replied coolly, withdrawing her hand. Chuck's uncle. Evelyn's eyes flickered with unease. You know him? Vivie asked, her gaze curious. No, not really. I just heard Chuck mention he was abroad. I'm surprised he's back, Evelyn remarked, her voice tense. Oh. Well, I'm off then, Vivie said, turning to leave. See you, Vivie. Evelyn called after her, forcing a cheerful tone. I thought Sylvia knew something just now, she mused uneasily. Just as Vivie reached the door, she paused and turned back, her eyes sharp. By the way, Eve. Have you seen my red heels? I can't seem to find them, Vivie asked with a faint smile. I don't know. I haven't seen you wear those shoes in a while, Evelyn stammered, stepping back slightly. Really? I guess I'll have to sort through my things later. Make sure they haven't been stolen, Vivie said lightly before walking out of the house. Evelyn stood frozen, trembling slightly, her face pale as she watched Vivie disappear through the door. At the hotel where the dinner was to be held, Charles' mother, Juliana, headed toward the dining room. Please come in, his bodyguard said, holding the door open and ushering her into Tristan's private room. Have you been waiting long, Tristan? Juliana asked as she saw him standing by the window, gazing outside. Hi, Juliana. I just got here, Tristan greeted her warmly. Charles and Vivie will be here any moment, Juliana replied with a polite smile. Just then, Tristan spotted Charles' car pulling up to the hotel entrance. Well, let's have the waiter start serving, Tristan suggested. Charles and Vivie soon entered the hotel, Vivie's hand resting lightly on Charles' arm. Inside the dining room, they all settled in and began their meal in quiet elegance. Tristan, you haven't been back for a long time, right? Did you return to personally handle important business for the company? Juliana asked, smiling politely. Our company is shifting some of its business focus back to this country, so I'll be staying here from now on, Tristan explained. Turning his gaze to Charles, he added, Chuck, I hear you've been managing our entertainment division well. Uncle, I'm also very interested in other business segments of the group. After all, I'm young and energetic, Charles replied calmly, cutting into his steak with precision. I'm glad we have a reliable young man like you in the family. Looks like I can start making decisions early, Tristan said warmly. You must be joking, Tristan. Chuck still has a lot to learn from you, Juliana quickly interjected, her face slightly flushed. Oh, I haven't introduced her to you yet. This is Chuck's fiancé, Sylvia Murray, the elder daughter of the Murray family. Vivie, quiet and composed, continued eating without acknowledging the introduction. Vivie, don't just focus on eating. Make a toast to your uncle, Juliana demanded sharply, her gaze filled with disapproval. Vivie paused, the fork lingering in her hand as memories flickered in her mind. She recalled Juliana chatting with a friend's daughter once. Tess, how thoughtful of you. If Chuck weren't engaged, I'd have him marry you, Juliana had said cheerfully, catching Vivie off guard. There was also the time when Vivie had presented a gift to her. Mom, this is for you. Vivie had said softly, holding out the carefully chosen gift. But instead of appreciation, Juliana had rebuked her sharply. Vivie, as a woman, you should be diligent and thrifty, not waste your husband's money, she had scolded coldly. Vivie clenched her jaw slightly at the memory. From now on, you'll clean the villa outside the city and leave all the household duties here to Sylvia, Juliana had ordered the maid sternly one day. Yes, the maid replied obediently. But, Vivie stammered. Since you're married into our family, you must take care of your husband and mother-in-law wholeheartedly, Juliana snapped, pointing angrily at Vivie, whose expression turned fearful. In her previous life, Juliana had never wanted Vivie to marry Charles. Even after the wedding, she had gone to great lengths to make Vivie's life difficult, hoping to drive her away. This time, I'll satisfy her expectations, Vivie thought bitterly. But I need to get away from Charles first. Her mind returned to the dining room as she continued eating, a fleeting smirk on her lips. Vivie, make a toast, Juliana demanded once again. I can't, Vivie replied coolly. What? Juliana's eyes widened in shock. I'm a poor drinker, so I'll leave the drinking to Charles, Vivie added with a polite smile. You, Juliana fumed, her face tensing. Charles, sensing the mounting tension, intervened quickly. Vivie is used to being casual at home. Please don't be upset, Uncle Tristan. I'll propose a toast instead. He stood with his wine glass in hand. It's fine. I don't drink either. I need to drive myself home, Tristan said, waving off the toast with a casual smile. Juliana, however, remained tense, glaring at Vivie from her seat. What's wrong with Sylvia today? She's usually so obedient, but now she's being downright rude. If you'll excuse me, I need to go to the restroom, Juliana announced, rising from her seat. As she passed by Vivie, she paused. Come with me, she commanded sharply. Mrs. Lawson, go by yourself. I'm young, so I look good even without touching up my makeup, Vivie said with a playful smile. Charles was stunned. You, Juliana glared, trembling slightly, drawing Tristan's attention as he paused his meal. If Tristan weren't here. This girl. Juliana seethed silently. Fine, I'll go alone, she snapped before leaving the dining room. Vivie raised her glass with a teasing grin. See you, Mrs. Lawson. Vivie, how can you speak to my mother like that? Charles scolded, but his phone rang, diverting his attention. Evelyn. He frowned, looking tense. Take care of the emergency first, Tristan advised calmly. I'll step outside for this, Charles muttered, rising from his seat. As he left, the room fell into a thoughtful silence. Tristan and Vivie exchanged quiet glances. Vivie knew Tristan was the current head of the Lawson family. In her previous life, she had little to do with him. The only thing she recalled was that during her kidney transplant, Charles had used Tristan's sudden death as an excuse for not visiting her in the hospital. He's in the prime of his life. What could have caused his sudden passing? She wondered. Did you enjoy dinner tonight, Miss Murray? Tristan's voice broke the silence. Thank you for the dinner, Mr. Lawson. It was delicious, she replied politely. Since you're still Charles' fiancé, you should rightly call me uncle, he suggested, raising an eyebrow. I already told you I plan to break off my engagement with Charles, she said, lifting her glass. He had an ulterior motive for inviting me here, she thought warily. But why? Chuck is the best of our younger generation, and I heard you two were always close. Why the sudden change of heart? Tristan's tone was calm but serious. When we were young, our elders arranged the engagement. But now that we're older, we have different ideas. I believe we should respect each other's choices, she said confidently, placing her glass on the table. As your elders, we respect your thoughts. But I'm curious, what prompted this decision? Tristan asked, resting his arms on the table, fingers interlaced. Vivie forced a tense smile. I can't tell him this is my second life or that I don't believe in love anymore. And why do I even need to explain myself to him? Sir, I don't think the reason matters. It's my personal freedom to end the engagement, she said with a polite smile. That's true. But there's something I want to show you, Tristan said, standing from his seat. He placed his phone on the table, displaying a photo of Vivie presenting a cake to Charles. A couple of days ago, you brought this cake to Chuck. Now you're treating him completely differently. Our family doesn't break engagements easily. Therefore, I hope you'll provide a reasonable explanation to facilitate how we handle this matter, Tristan said firmly, his expression serious. Is he worried that some scandal could affect Lawson Group's stock price? Vivie wondered, her expression tense but still composed. She understood that the real reason she wanted to break off the engagement was because Charles and Evelyn would ruin her family and ultimately lead to her downfall. I can't tell him the real reason. Even if I did, he'd just side with his family and Charles, she thought. Tristan observed her silence. She risked her life to save Chuck from the fire. That's why my father arranged for Chuck to be engaged to her, he reflected. His father had not only been grateful to Sylvia, but also admired her courage. As a result, he privately included 10% of the Lawson Group's shares in the engagement agreement, something Vivie was unaware of. According to the contract, when Chuck and Sylvia married, they'd share those 10%. But if they broke off the engagement, Sylvia would receive all of it as a reward for saving Chuck's life. Charles' mother didn't think it was fair that an outsider would gain the shares that could have gone to Charles, but Tristan's father refused to change his mind. This was something known only within the Lawson family. Could Sylvia have learned about the shares and is now trying to break off the engagement to claim them for herself? Tristan wondered, his gaze flickering over to Vivie. Vivie, her thoughts racing, glanced at him before looking away, her expression tightening. Why does he care so much about this engagement? Breaking it off shouldn't cause any major issues for their family, she thought. I need to come up with a plausible reason for this decision. She recalled Tristan's words when she was in the hospital. A woman suddenly appeared in front of me, something that happens to me often. You're not the first one to do so, but your acting is the best of them all. An idea formed in her mind. Turning toward Tristan, she smiled, making him flinch slightly. She stood up, closing the distance between them, and placed her hand on his collar. If I told you I prefer more mature men over Charles, would you accept that as a reason? She asked, her smile lingering as Tristan regarded her with a quiet, slightly perplexed look. Vivie was confident that Tristan would most likely accept her explanation. Just as Tristan opened his mouth to respond, Charles entered the room. Uncle Tristan? What's going on here? Charles asked, his voice tight as he pulled their attention to him. Tristan quickly freed himself from Vivie, stepping away with a composed expression. I was just having a little chat with Miss Murray, he replied, adjusting his jacket as he sat back down. Charles noticed a red mark on Tristan's neck and shot him a suspicious look. Really? He asked, his eyes narrowing. Vivie glanced at Charles as he stood near the door. Did he hear what we were talking about? She thought, a smirk curling on her lips. It would be best if he did. She felt a certain satisfaction, recalling how Charles had always flirted with Evelyn after their marriage in her previous life. Now, I'll make him feel the same way, she thought, her expression cold but composed. Chuck, why are you standing by the door? Juliana's voice broke the tension as she stepped out from the bathroom and came to stand behind him. Nothing. Just got back, Charles replied shortly, his tone icy. He returned to his seat, and the group resumed their dinner, with dessert being served shortly after. The most famous dish in this hotel is the pistachio mousse. It's truly delicious, Juliana said, smiling. Vivie, you usually enjoy making desserts, but I think the ones you make just don't taste as good. Maybe you could learn from the chef here sometime, she added, her gaze sour. Vivie responded with a calm smile, "It doesn't matter. Since you don't like it, I'll never make it for you again." Her words seemed to irritate Juliana even more, her finger shaking as she pointed at Vivie. It's far easier to make someone angry than to please them, Vivie thought, a smile still in place as she continued eating. "Uncle Tristan, what kind of dessert do you like?" Vivie asked brightly. "I'll make it myself and bring it to you next time." "No need," Tristan replied, his voice neutral, showing no interest. "Uncle Tristan doesn't like sweets," Charles chimed in, glaring at Vivie as he spoke. Tristan couldn't help but notice the slight flinch on Charles's face, his gaze sharp as he observed his nephew's reaction. "So, Uncle Tristan, what do you like to eat?" "I'm pretty good at cooking," Vivie said warmly, resting her chin on her palm as she looked at him with interest. Charles shot her a stern look. "He's always busy with work, so don't give him any trouble, Vivie." Vivie raised an eyebrow, acting innocent. "I just thought I'd offer since we hit it off." "How can that be trouble?" she teased, her playful tone directed at Tristan. Charles glared at her, clearly frustrated. Juliana seemed a bit startled by the exchange. "By the way, Uncle Tristan, it looks like you've hurt your neck. Did something bite you?" Charles asked. Tristan paused briefly, then responded with a calm expression. "Well, I got bitten by a mosquito." Vivie flushed, looking slightly embarrassed. Charles, ever the considerate one, offered, "How about I check it for you? I can buy you some ointment later." Tristan's cold gaze made Charles pause. "I'm fine." "You don't have to worry about it," Tristan said, his voice firm. Tristan shifted the focus back to the meal. "This cake really tastes good. You should eat more," he added, as Charles stared at him, taken aback. He quickly glanced at the waiter, who promptly served Charles another slice at Tristan's request. After dinner, the group left the hotel. Outside, Tristan bid Juliana farewell. "Uncle, I'll take Vivie home," Charles said with a smile. Tristan nodded in acknowledgement. "All right." Charles turned to Vivie with a cheerful expression. "Get in the car, Vivie. I'll take you home." Vivie walked past him without a word. "Thanks, but no," she replied, heading for the other side. Inside his car, Tristan adjusted his seatbelt, preparing to leave when Vivie opened the passenger door and slid in beside him. "Miss Murray, what are you doing?" Tristan asked, his expression puzzled. Vivie smiled sheepishly. "You said you live on the east side of the city, so you'll be passing by my house on your way home. Could you give me a ride?" Tristan frowned slightly. It would be more appropriate for Charles to give you a ride. Just then, Charles opened the back door and slid into the car, folding his arms. "Uncle, I almost forgot that I had some red wine during dinner. Would you mind driving Vivie and me home?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes narrowing as he glanced at Vivie. Tristan nodded and started the car. At a red light, the tension in the car became palpable. The silence grew thicker as Charles glared at Vivie from the back seat. "Uncle Tristan, can I play some music?" Vivie asked politely, breaking the silence. "Sure," he replied. Vivie pressed play, her favorite song filling the car. "This one's too loud," Charles complained, his voice tight as he shifted in his seat. "Change it," he said. "Is it?" "I think it's a good song," Vivie replied softly, her eyes still on the road as she enjoyed the music. Charles leaned forward, abruptly pausing the song and sitting back with a frown. "Uncle, what did you talk to Vivie about alone at dinner?" he asked. Glancing at him in the rearview mirror, Tristan responded, "We talked about her breaking off your engagement." "What?" Charles snapped, his voice rising with frustration. "Sylvia, how could you say something like that to Uncle Tristan?" Vivie met his glare, unfazed. "I've told you before about the annulment. Do you think I'm joking?" she retorted. "And Uncle Tristan supports my decision," she added, her tone lighter as she looked over at him. Charles glared at her. "Uncle Tristan, are you going to interfere in our engagement?" Tristan's grip tightened on the wheel as he hit the brake suddenly, causing Charles to jolt back in his seat. There must be a reason for her wanting to break off the engagement. "Maybe you should think about whether you've done something wrong," he said, his voice calm but sharp. Charles turned his gaze away, hiding his discomfort. "I didn't," he muttered. Vivie eyed him, surprised that Tristan seemed to have figured out something Charles didn't want to admit. She hadn't expected that. "Maybe he's not as clueless as I thought," she mused, glancing at him with a flush. "Miss Murray," Tristan said, breaking the silence, "it's normal for couples to fight, but don't do anything impulsive. If you abandon someone you once risked your life for in a moment of anger, you'll regret it later. His words caught Vivie off guard, reminding her of the fire incident from her childhood when she had saved Charles. She remembered Tristan's voice in the chaos. Mr. Chuck has been rescued. Get him to the ambulance. This little girl isn't in good condition either. I'll take her to the hospital. As she stared at Tristan, something about his face seemed familiar. Why do I feel like I've seen him before? She wondered, trying to place it. I hope you can think it through calmly, Miss Murray, Tristan continued, his eyes focused on the road. If, after you've thought it through, you still want to break off the engagement, I'll respect your decision. Vivie lay her head against the window, her thoughts scattered. He must know about my childhood. But I don't want to protect Charles anymore, she thought, stealing another glance at Tristan's reflection. Just then, Tristan's phone buzzed. Uncle Tristan, your phone is pinging, Charles remarked. I'm driving. I can't answer it, Tristan replied, his attention never wavering from the road. What if it's an emergency? Let me get your phone. Vivie insisted, reaching into his pocket. No need, Tristan said sharply, but Vivie ignored him and continued to slip her hand deeper into his pocket. She finally found something, but couldn't pull it out. Got it. But why can't I take it out? She muttered, tugging. Tristan slammed on the brakes, the car screeching as he looked flustered. The phone's in the other pocket, he said, his voice betraying a hint of embarrassment. Vivie froze, her face suddenly tense as she realized what had happened. Oh no, she thought, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. Vivie, what are you doing? Don't you realize this will affect Uncle Tristan's driving? Charles asked, confusion in his voice. Sorry, Vivie replied, her face flushed as she sat back in her seat, her gaze dropping. What did I just do? She thought, feeling dazed. There was an awkward silence in the car as Tristan continued driving. Vivie remained lost in her thoughts, still embarrassed by her actions. Soon, they reached Vivie's house. Thank you for driving me home. Be careful on the way back, Vivie said, trying to regain some composure. Tristan nodded, before driving off. As she turned to go inside, Charles grabbed her hand, startling her. He's gone. What are you looking at? He snapped. I didn't expect you to be so friendly. Is this really the first time you've met Uncle Tristan? Let go of me. I'm going home, Vivie said sharply, trying to free her hand. Vivie, are you angry with me? Is this because of Eve? Charles asked, his voice softening slightly. There's nothing going on between us. Evelyn saved my life, and I've always looked out for her because of that. What did you just say? Evelyn saved your life? Vivie asked, looking completely stunned. Charles, looking confused, answered, don't you remember? When I was little, there was a fire at my house, and I almost died in it. Eve risked her life to save me. Vivie stood there, stunned. What is he talking about? I was the one who saved him, she thought, still processing his words. Charles then opened a ring box, showing her an engagement ring. I've been ready for this for a long time, he said, gently taking her hand. Once you finish serving the sentence in Eve's place, she and I will be even. Then we'll get married, he added, slipping the ring onto her finger. You know how frail she's always been. The conditions in prison are tough. You must be worried she won't be able to handle it, too, he said, his voice softening with what seemed like genuine concern. Vivie was quiet for a moment, reflecting on everything Charles had said. So, he's been caring for Evelyn all this time because he thinks she saved his life? Charles raised her hand to his lips and kissed it. Vivie, believe me. We're going to be happy together for the rest of our lives, he added. Vivie slapped him, her anger rising. What a hypocrite, she muttered under her breath. Vivie? Charles asked, holding his cheek in surprise. In my previous life, I repaid the favor to her on your behalf, Vivie thought, recalling how Charles had treated her. But what did you do to me in return? If you truly love someone, you would never want her to suffer or be sad because of you. I learned that lesson the hard way, Vivie thought, her anger rising. She quickly removed the engagement ring and threw it at Charles. Charles, whether you love Evelyn or not is none of my business. I'm breaking off our engagement anyway, she said, her voice steady but firm. In this life, I won't have any more entanglements with you. Just continue to misunderstand. From now on, you can love Evelyn to your heart's content. Charles watched, his face twisted in frustration. Sylvia, I told you everything I truly feel. "How can you be so mean?" he shouted, but Vivie didn't stop walking. She entered the house and slammed the door behind her. Standing outside, Charles gritted his teeth, his anger simmering. "You'll regret this, Sylvia," he muttered bitterly. The next morning, Vivie paused her chores as a loud noise from downstairs caught her attention. "Tell her to come out and see us. She has to give us an explanation today," someone shouted. Vivie frowned. "What's going on? Why is it so noisy downstairs?" Downstairs, a group of men barged into the mansion, shoving the maid out of the way. "What the hell do you want?" Vivie's dad shouted, pointing at the men as his wife rushed to help the maid who had fallen. "Do you know it's against the law to trespass?" he demanded. "If you don't leave now, I'm calling the police." "Then call the police and let them do justice," the leader of the group snapped, smirking. "Your daughter hit and ran, and she thinks she can get away with it." Vivie's father turned to Evelyn, a concerned look on his face. "Eve, did you really hit someone?" Evelyn stood frozen, her eyes wide with fear. "No, I didn't," she said softly, looking pitiful. The leader sneered, pointing at Vivie as she descended the stairs. "It's her," he said, accusingly. Vivie's eyes widened in surprise as she stepped forward, completely caught off guard. Evelyn stifled a laugh as she glanced at Vivie. "What? It's Vivie," her parents echoed, their expressions tense as they looked at Vivie. "I hit someone? Do you have any evidence?" Vivie asked, walking toward them. "Look at this," one man snapped, showing a photo of Vivie's car hitting a man. "Who else could it be? Don't even try to deny it. This is solid evidence." Vivie's father turned to her, anger and confusion in his voice. "Vivie, is it true? And how could you make Eve take the fall for it?" Vivie's mind raced, her heart tightening. "What's with this picture?" she thought, trying to keep her composure. "I didn't do it," she replied, her voice tense. Suddenly, Evelyn began to fake tears, her voice shaky. "Vivie, we can't hide it anymore. I'm sorry," she sobbed, playing the victim. "Don't be afraid, Eve," her father said, his voice softening as he tried to console her. "Just tell me who did it, and we'll fix this." "Sylvia, did you force Eve to take the blame for you?" her father demanded, his tone sharp. "Not only did you do something wrong, but you also threatened your sister. Am I understanding this correctly?" Vivie stayed silent, her mind racing. Something's off, she thought, narrowing her eyes. In her previous life, she had taken the blame for Evelyn herself, ending up with a year in prison for the hit and run, despite there being no evidence presented at the trial. It had been Evelyn who had done it. But now, there was a photo, clear evidence, and they were insisting she was the one at fault. Why are they pushing this story? Vivie wondered, trying to process her next move. Evelyn watched Vivie closely, a flicker of worry in her eyes. Why isn't Sylvia denying it right away? Why is she so calm? Does she suspect something? Evelyn smirked inwardly. But that's useless. This isn't the only evidence I have. I've got plenty of ways to put you in jail, she thought, a faint grin tugging at the corners of her mouth. "So, you're here today to tell me you're going to sue me?" Vivie asked, her arms folded, her expression unbothered. "You think we don't dare?" one of the thugs threatened, but his leader quickly silenced him with a hand over his mouth. All right, enough," the leader said with a smile, stepping forward. "You've misunderstood, Miss Murray. We're actually here to resolve this matter amicably with you," he explained. "Oh? Go on," Vivie replied, her tone cool and unmoved. "We're here to negotiate on behalf of Mr. Zook. He's currently in the hospital due to injuries from the car accident. He's not looking to make a big deal out of this. It's actually a good thing for you, Miss Murray," he said, adjusting his glasses and maintaining his smile. "So, he's asked us to come and seek compensation from you. As long as you meet his demands, he won't escalate things. It's a good deal for you, isn't it? After all, a hit and run with serious injuries can lead to imprisonment," he added calmly, making Mr. Murray flinch at the mention of prison. "How much do you want?" Vivie asked, her voice flat. "You'll need to cover his medical expenses, lost wages, meals, and provide disability and mental damage compensation. In total, $300,000. It's not a lot for someone like you, right?" he said with a peace sign. "Indeed," Vivie replied. "I have $5 here. You can buy Mr. Zook a meal with it." "What do you mean by that?" The man snapped angrily. "I'm not the one who hit him, so why would I pay you anything?" Vivie said, still calm, her arms crossed. You're trying to extort $300,000 from me with a fake photo? I'm not some fool who hands over money just because you demand it. Fake photo, her mother asked, her voice laced with doubt. I can't believe you're still trying to deny it when the solid evidence is right in front of you, the man barked. I'm warning you, if we take this to court, it's going to cost you much more than $300,000. All right, then, go ahead and sue me, Vivie said, her voice unwavering. I also have solid evidence that I didn't do it. What? The man and his two associates froze, their confusion clear. Does this woman really have any evidence? He thought, his eyes narrowing as he glanced at Evelyn. Evelyn, are you fooling us around? He wondered, his mind racing as doubt crept in.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure. If you enjoyed what you watched, please consider liking, subscribing, and ringing that notification bell. Your comments mean the world to us and help us improve. The next episode promises even more excitement and unexpected twists, so stay tuned as we embark on this thrilling journey together. Keep the anticipation alive, and we'll catch you in the next episode.